Pouring blood on draft files probably causes far more dollar damage than does breaking windows. Now, why is one condemned and the other not?
Authorities making that they did find weapons and buckets of urine.
We just said.
They made it like secondly. Okay.
We can address the buckets of urine.
Okay.
I have
Well, I will speak to the first question in terms of items claimed. I mean, I don't think anyone here knows of anything regarding explosives, and I think as has been said many times, I certainly don't know, and I can only speak for myself, but I was heavily involved inside of making this space up over the last week, and particularly with regard to the buckets of urine, we really after the sheriff's department seemed to have such a fetish for scatology, we really we spent a long time thinking through and discussing with one another where this could have come from, and we finally did remember that there was an instance at a general town hall. We've been having many town halls to talk to local St. Paul residents to make sure that we touch bases with them in their community, to make sure that the activists coming in out of town would be in conjunction with the local communities here inside of St. Paul. And at one of these town halls, which we did in conjunction with other activists who've been organizing around, organizing marches and the like, they assisted us in organizing these town halls, and we were really there just to hear from the community. One person stood up in the background. I believe this was with Weyerhaeuser Chapel and McAllister College. I'm not sure what time it was or what the date was that this town hall was. And this guy stood up in the back and he said, "What you guys really ought to do is throw piss at the Republicans." And everybody was sort of like, and he was sort of a sketchy figure, and I think we may have mentioned it to one another. Remember the P guy? A couple other times since. But that is the only instance that the only thing we know of. And with regards to the buckets and buckets, yes, there were buckets of gray water. Folks who washed their dishes and wanted to save water had some buckets in their homes, particularly those who were extra concerned. There was no urine in those, and I believe instead of one instance we can confirm that somebody who was living in a garage didn't have plumbing going out to that garage. Again, they raided so many houses. One person who was living in a garage, staying there or whatever in that room, had a bucket that he had pissed a little bit in because he couldn't get access to the toilet.
I heard a lot about consensus. I mean, that's the whole point of your group. Non-hierarchical, there aren't leaders, there's always consensus. We see these hand signal process points up here. I was part of your group in terms of observing, and there definitely were violent tactics by some people. Whether they were active members of the core group of welcoming committee leaders, I can't say. What I'm asking, though, is how do you personally feel that some people involved in the greater movement did engage in violent tactics?
I want to clear up one misconception briefly. The welcoming committee, the name the welcoming committee only applies. Well, I mean, everybody can claim they're all Spartacus, right?
Right.
But we were simply at this center and at other places organizing medics. Like the welcoming committee has never officially. We were not on the streets. There was no welcoming committee banner on the streets. So in terms of acts of violence, I really don't understand where those could have taken place. There's simply no location where those could have happened. And when the cops came in and smashed our faces against the floor, the only violence.
No, I'm talking about on the streets during that first day.
I can tell you that in the 18 months that I've been with the Welcoming Committee, I have been listening as a religious pacifist, as a nonviolence trainer, as someone with a reputation to uphold. I've been listening really carefully to what's been discussed in the Welcoming Committee. I've been listening to what's been talked about. I've been present at the action camp that was named in the affidavit. And I've been assessing all the time whether I want to keep on this track. And I've been answering myself yes every time I ask that question. The definition of violence itself is very slippery. In some cases, property destruction is considered violence, and in some cases it's not considered violence by the very people that I work with the most closely in the peace and justice community. The definition of violence itself is slippery. Second point, tactical innovation that I spoke about before for nonviolent direct action is not going to come from the center. It's not going to come from the folks who have been organizing marches and rallies and doing a good job of it and doing it well. It's not, but they're not the innovators. The innovators are the people who are dissatisfied with that model. And that's the people in the welcoming committee, and that's the people we invited to come here. I can tell you that I personally did not and probably wouldn't smash the Macy's window. But I'm not going to condemn the person who did it.
Why?
I don't know what's going to come of this. I think that
The window wasn't placed. I mean, that was what resulted in it.
Yeah, okay. I think that there's a good expression, a good argument that capitalism is a problem. Macy's is a capitalist. I personally
What
find
about the people
capitalism a
that,
real
you know,
problem.
make their living and...
So, part of consensus process is also not interrupting, and I know it's anarchist organizing is difficult for some members of the media to comprehend, but we have this trunk right next to him about consensus process, so we'd appreciate not interrupting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I lost my thought.
Talking about capitalism.
Yes, I find capitalism to be a problem myself. Okay, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
I think you were addressing whether property damage counted as violence. Because you say you're not violent, and somebody smashes a window in front of you, you have a problem with
But she
that.
wasn't there.
I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I will say, okay, so here, let me give you two examples. Smashing windows on the one hand, pouring blood on draft files on another hand. Now, both of those are property destruction. Pouring blood on draft files probably causes far more dollar damage than does breaking windows. Now, why is one condemned and the other not? It's not a matter of money. And it could be a matter of intent, but that, I think, really has to be judged on a case-by-case basis.